Hey everyone, I'm Mike from theparkprodigy.com, and on today's video we're going to break down the busiest days here in Universal Orlando. So I'm actually going to jump around and I'm going to break down the busiest days here at Universal Studios Florida, which is essentially right behind me. Then I'm also going to go over to Islands of Adventure, break down the busiest days over there. We might talk about Volcano Bay, and then I'll give you essentially the best days to visit. I'll give you what my perfect itinerary would be here at Universal Orlando Resort. So if you are in the process of planning that Universal Orlando trip and you're trying to figure out the best days to be in the parks, just be sure to stick around until the end of this video. As always, I'm very excited, so let's go get started. Thank you guys again so much for checking out this video. Like I said, we are about to break down the busiest days here in Universal Orlando Resort. So if you are in the process of planning that Universal Orlando trip, and it seems like you need more videos like this to be as prepared as possible, just be sure to hit that subscribe button right down there. And we would love the support, and be sure to follow our channel, as I do have a lot more similar videos coming out helping you plan an amazing Universal Orlando trip in the near future. But let's jump right in and let's start to talk about what are the busiest days here at Islands of Adventure Park. So in order from least to busiest, we do have a kind of a tie. We have Monday and Friday. Next we have Thursday, and then Saturday being the busiest day here at Islands of Adventure Park. And honestly, when I went and looked at the data, and just so you guys know, I actually looked at, it's a website called Q Times. I'm not getting plugged or promoted to say that. I think they have a great website with making it very easy to kind of sort through the data on the front end. We track our own wait time data, but the reason why I'm using Q Times in this scenario is so you can go and actually look yourself and look at the same stuff I'm looking at. Essentially what I did was I went to each park, filtered by the statistics, and then I actually looked. This is updated as of 2024, so this is really the most up-to-date for this year. That's kind of how I'm coming up with the busiest days, essentially. But what I thought was interesting over here in Islands of Adventure, or just Universal Orlando in general compared to over in Disney World, is if you actually go and watch one of the other videos I did, the busiest days in Disney, Thursday was actually the least busy day in Disney, and I thought it was really interesting. Something just hopped out of the bush over here. I'm gonna back up. I'm in Florida before I get bit by a weird bug or something, I don't know. So again, what I thought was interesting, and now kind of full circle, maybe it's not as busy over in Disney because everyone's coming over to Universal. And I said in that video, it kind of makes sense that, you know, people are, by day 3 or 4 of a Disney vacation, maybe you want a break. I thought families were hanging back at the Disney hotels, but maybe they are coming over to the, to Islands of Adventure. So just interesting to keep in mind. But next I'm going to break down the busiest days over in Universal Studios Florida, and then we'll even talk about Volcano Bay as well. All right, so now that we've gone over Islands of Adventure, now what are the busiest days of the week here at Universal Studios Florida, which is the other main theme park as of 2024 anyway. Of course, in 2025 we will have Epic Universe coming. So the busiest days of the week here at Universal Studios Florida are going to be Monday, Friday, and Saturday. And as you'll see, there's a trend when it comes to the busiest days, really at all the theme parks, right? Monday is typically the busiest day, even over at Disney, just because a lot of families for their theme park vacation are flying in on Sunday or Monday. So typically Monday is like the first real day in the parks, right? And of course, when it comes to the weekend, specifically over in Universal Studios Florida, we do have a lot of, Florida locals that do come here to the park. So for that reason, you'll see Friday, Saturday, like I said, are typically going to be the busiest days. Monday is, right there, not so far behind. All right, so next we're going to break down essentially the busiest days throughout the year, like specific days, and there's going to be a lot of holidays in here, so just kind of keep that in mind. But starting with the start of the year, we do have New Year's Eve, and then New Year's Day is one of the busiest. Then we have in January Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, essentially that entire weekend. February we do have President's Day weekend, essentially that entire weekend. Of course we have Easter week, specifically Easter. Spring break in general, it's typically going to be, busier than normal, I would say. So just keep that in mind. Not saying you can't have a great time, especially if you come up with, a solid game plan, but typically it's going to be busier than normal. Then we also have 4th of July weekend in July, typically when that's going on. We have Columbus Day weekend in October, just because that's another one of the, kind of in the middle of the spring breaks. We have Veterans Day weekend in November. We have Thanksgiving weekend, and then we have essentially the entire Christmas break. So those are typically going to be the busiest days here in Universal Orlando Resort. All right, so now that we've gone over all of the busiest times to visit Universal Orlando. We've broken down Universal Studios Florida, Islands of Adventure. Let's jump back to Universal Studios Florida. Now, what are going to be the slowest days to come and visit this park? So, as a general rule of thumb, the slowest days to visit Universal Studios Florida are going to be Wednesday, Sunday, and Tuesday. So Sunday kind of snuck in there, but you'll see, and like I mentioned in this video, Universal Studios Florida really is just in general not as crowded as Islands of Adventure, specifically because Islands of Adventure really does have the two most popular rides, which are going to be the Jurassic World Velocicoaster and then Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure. That's also very important to keep in mind, as that's typically the park that gets early park admission the most. You know, as of the time of the recording of this video anyway, so right, Universal Studios Florida, because it doesn't have early park admission as much as the other park, typically it's not as crowded. So that's generally how I would break it down. You'll see after I break down Islands of Adventure next, I'll kind of give you an idea of how I would tackle the parks. All right, so back over to Islands of Adventure. Now that we broke down the best days to essentially visit Universal Studios Florida, I'm breaking down the best days to visit Islands of Adventure theme park. So essentially the least busy, least crowded days here at Islands of Adventure are generally going to be Wednesday or Sunday. So as you'll see, you know, you have some pretty good options there right in the middle of the week or really even at the start of your week on Sunday. So as you can see, we should be able to come up with a great itinerary based on the least busy days. All right, so what about Volcano Bay? What are the busiest days over there? So Volcano Bay is a little bit trickier than the main two theme parks here at Universal Orlando, just because they use the tapu system, which essentially allows you to kind of, you know, make a reservation and then go and skip the line. So it's a little bit harder to track like as wait times go up. What I would say though is, in general, the busiest days are going to be in the summer, but in the summer, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just because that park is by far the best water park here in Orlando, and it's popular amongst Florida locals, and it can fill and get to capacity, and typically we'll see that the most going into, you know, the summer. It actually just happened also in Memorial Day weekend here in 2024. It did reach capacity. So just keep that in mind, and you'll see I'll break down kind of how I would still fit that into your trip. I would say the other thing to keep in mind too is, I know I'm talking about the busiest days, and I'm about to break down like this is how I would set it up, but I've said this in my Disney World video too about the busiest days there. Overall, I wouldn't get too tied up, right? If you're only coming for a weekend trip, you'll still have an amazing time. What I would say is be sure to do some additional research, team up with a company like the Park Prodigy will help you create custom itineraries and park plans. Just knowing exactly which rides you want to get on and like which rides to go to, which park you're going to start at for early park admission. That is probably, as I get my hand in the camera, that is probably most important and more important than, you know, saying, okay, we're going to go to this park on, you know, Thursday because it's less crowded than going on Friday. Just my honest opinion. But not saying this stuff can help and give you a little bit of an edge, but it's not the most important thing in the world. All right, so now essentially how would I break down my itinerary if coming to Universal Orlando Resort? So I'm starting with, if you're coming just to visit the main two theme parks, and this is just essentially, of course, you're most likely visiting for a couple of days, but this is just if picking, you know, you want to make sure that you hit the slowest days. So I would go with Universal Studios Florida, which is this park right behind me. I would go with Universal Studios Florida on Tuesday, and then Islands of Adventure on Wednesday. If you're mixing in Volcano Bay, then I would say, hey, go and visit Volcano Bay on Monday, or you can hit Volcano Bay on the opposite side and hit Volcano Bay on Thursday. If you're visiting on the weekend, the way I would break it down, I would go to Universal Studios Florida on Friday. I would go to Islands of Adventure on Sunday, and if you're mixing in Volcano Bay, I would go to Volcano Bay on Saturday, just because it does have the tapu, and I think that will kind of help you navigate. But like I said, keep in mind, if you're going to Volcano Bay on a Saturday, make sure that you get there super early, maybe even for early park admission. Go and check out theparkprodigy.com if you need more help understanding exactly how that works. But that's kind of how I would break everything down. So that's essentially our quick little video on the busiest days here at Universal Orlando Resort. What I would also say is, if you are in the process of planning a Universal Orlando trip and you do need a little additional help, just be sure to go check out our website, theparkprodigy.com. We actually do have a crowd calendar that helps you pick out the slowest days here in the parks. And of course, as a thank you for sticking all the way till the end of this video, I do have a special promo code you can go use on our website, theparkprodigy.com, on some discounted theme park tickets, a Universal Orlando vacation package, whatever your heart desires. And that promo code is going to be YouTube25. But I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys again so much for checking out this video. And until next time, I will talk to you soon.